Well, we're in the woodshed today, guys, and we're going to get to the question that I probably get asked the most out of everything. Why doesn't my wah work with my fuzz? This mostly regards to guys putting their wah first because, to be totally honest with you, I think it's a lot of seeing your favorite player possibly do that, or one I get a lot. Well, Jimmy did it. That's a tough one because Jimmy did a lot of things that no human will ever be able to replicate. I've already exceeded my allotted time of talking. But the wah and the fuzz. Okay, here's the thing. If you listen to a lot of those Hendrix records, and there's going to be a lot of Hendrix fans on here, hopefully watching, maybe you guys can chime in, maybe you can tell me I'm wrong. Either way, it's great for the video. But when Jimmy was using the fuzz full on and stepping on the wah, he wasn't using it, in my opinion, to get a full wah function, like he wanted a nice clear wah. I think he was using it to make those notes jump out. Like if you take a solo, I don't necessarily think that he was thinking to himself, I'm not getting full sweep with my wah in the middle of my playing. I think it was more along the lines of making those treble notes sound extremely angry. Working there, and you're not getting most cases, Jimmy's wah and fuzz were modified by a guy named Roger Mayer. If you don't know who Roger Mayer is, you might want to research it. He's given us great pedals like the Roger Mayer Octavia, and he also traveled with a guy named Jim Hendrix and was able to modify his pedals on the fly. So on top of not being Jimi Hendrix, on top of not playing through 3 to 4 Marshall stacks on kill, and not being able to replicate what possibly the greatest guitar player of all time did, you weren't traveling with a guy named Roger Mayer who could sit there and just say, okay, let me do this, let me do this, let me do this. And now your wah and your fuzz can work together. And maybe Jimmy did like the wah first because it did produce that scream only that he was looking for. But if you take the fuzz and you do something like this, but now check this out. Sit down with the two pedals that you're trying to work with and find what works best for you. Not what works best for Jimi Hendrix, for Stevie Ray Vaughan, for Gary Clark Jr., for Philip Sayce, for J.D. Simo, for whatever the big name player you're into. Find what works best for you. This topic was brought on because I recently sold a couple of really important things because I just wasn't using them and they could go to better homes. And somebody had asked me, why would you sell something like that? And I don't know, I seem to have found what I want with maybe 4 or 5 pedals. And as long as you pretty much have a backup for each one of those, you're kind of just cutting it down. And I think if you look at a guy like Jimi Hendrix up there, his floor rig was a wah-wah. In the beginning, it was a wah-wah and a fuzz. So I'm sure that there were times where that wah was set up differently. The fuzz was seeing the guitar first. And keep in mind, a fuzz does want to see a guitar first. I want to introduce right now a good dude, a solid buddy. His name's Aaron, and he runs Dominion Fuzz. He's basically recreating fuzz faces. That's become a popular thing, but it's been a great market. You have Dominion Fuzz making these relic, vintage, almost authentic fuzz pedals. You have Jimmy C, who is a great guy on Instagram. You might want to follow him. He's making beautiful fuzz pedals. I hope to play one someday. And then you have, Ivor, which kind of started that whole relic fuzz thing. But my buddy Aaron is really, he's trick into getting them to sound right, not just look right. He really wants them to sound right, and he's always interested in feedback, and he's tone hunting. I asked him, if he had any input for this video I was about to sit down and do, and he was able to give me a couple of clips of some insight and some methods of what's going on when the fuzz is reacting with the wah. So we're going to cut to him, and he's going to explain that.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. Aaron here from Dominion Fuzz. Nick was shooting a video and he kindly asked me if I would jump on and have a little bit of a discussion on what it is that's happening when we try to run one of these old type fuzz faces in conjunction with a wah, and what we can do to work around some of the problems that we might experience. So that being said, let's take a look at the sketchboard right now and talk a little bit about what's happening and what we can do. So I've drawn a quick diagram to help explain things in as simple of terms as possible. We could get really deep into the science of all of this, but it's not worth it. The thing that you need to remember is this. You have your pickups, you have the wah, and you have the fuzz face. Now what we're talking about is impedance. So your pickups are typically a high output impedance device. The wah also is a high output impedance device. Now the fuzz face is a low input impedance device. So what happens is normally devices want to see the same impedance. And so the problem that we're running into is the high output impedance of the wah mismatching with the low input impedance of the fuzz face. What this is creating is a resonant circuit. And what that does is it builds up, and then oscillates. And so that's what you're hearing when you're trying to run the wah before the fuzz, is that oscillation and the lack of sweep. So there's a couple things we can do to fix this problem. Method number one is you can run your signal chain like this. You can run guitar into wah, which is then coming out as a high output impedance. Now what we need to do is we need to convert this to a low impedance so that it matches with the input of the fuzz face. So what we can do to do this is we can put a buffer in between the two units, and what will happen is the buffer will take that high output impedance and convert it to low output impedance, which will then match with the fuzz face, and that's why you'll regain the sweep and the sound of your wah. This pedal doesn't necessarily have to be on if it's something like a Boss pedal or something with an always on buffer. The second way you can fix this problem that you see a lot these days is you can basically take that same method that we had in number one, but we can incorporate it into the wah. So you'll see a lot of circuits nowadays that are built into the wah, and what that effectively does is take the wah, which normally has, remember, a high output impedance. So you run through the wah, and then it goes into a buffer that's installed internally. So you're effectively taking that pedal that we had in between and putting it into the wah. And then it makes it so the output of your wah when it's on is low impedance, which then again matches with the fuzz face. And so that keeps all your interaction good and clean. The other alternative that you have is to do things the other way around, right? So you can run signal into the fuzz face right away, which will then, this mismatch between your pickups and the fuzz face is what creates those great dynamics when you work with the volume knob. And then the fuzz face can run into the wah with its low output impedance. And then the wah will convert it on its way out to high output impedance. So you're going to run into some tone loss because of this high output impedance of the wah, which is why a lot of people sometimes will like to put a buffer after the wah to convert that signal back to low impedance before it moves along to your amp. This is the method that I prefer. I find that fuzz into wah gives you a really pure wah tone when you roll off the fuzz face and get some of those cleans happening. Jimi Hendrix, on the other hand, effectively employed this method here, because what he was using in this position more often than not was the Univibe, which has an always-on preamp, which effectively was converting that signal to low output impedance before hitting the fuzz. Now, however, he didn't always follow this rule. You oftentimes will see instances or hear bootlegs where Jimmy's using his wah and you can hear the oscillation where he must have been running it the standard way of running just wah into fuzz face. So in its most basic form, that's what's happening when we're trying to run a fuzz face with a wah, and why we need to sort of find out what it is that works best for us by changing the order or playing around with buffers. There is no perfect solution. The only solution is what you like and what works best for you. So you got to play around and try things, and you never know, you might find something that's unique to you and what you like. So with that being said, let's throw it back to Nick and get into the tones.
One more thing I wanted to mention with having the fuzz seeing the guitar first is, to me, the circuit of the fuzz wants to see these pickups first. And I did a video a couple weeks back about clean, glassy tone. That's really what's going on here, you know. Your guitar is basically... I mean, that's a beautiful clean... So imagine that kind of tone with a wah-wah, right? Now you click the wah-wah on. You wonder how Jimmy kind of got a lot of those crazy wah-wah tones. I think in some cases, yes, the amps were pushed hard, but I really do feel like in some cases he was plugging into the fuzz first. Maybe if he had a fuzz that was a little lower gain or one that was kind of loud, I don't know, but I do hear oscillation in the live recordings. I don't hear it just a smooth wah with the fuzz face on, you know? So there's a trick when you go into the fuzz face first. You not only get these crazy clean rolled off tones, okay? You allow your signal into the fuzz to be the purest it can be because it's seeing the guitar first. And when you do roll off, you're getting just this... an amp turned up to its full potential, you know, if you have a 50 watt amp and you're playing it in 2 in your bedroom, your fuzz is going to sound horrible through that. Mark my words, there's no way. Unless you can push the tone and compress it and maybe drive it a little bit and then hit it with the fuzz, it's going to sound really rough. Also, when working the wah and fuzz together, turn the fuzz knob down. Don't just take the fuzz knob and dime it. You know, really blend that in, because you can go from, we'll try a different fuzz. This is the one from Isle of Tone. I really like these guys. I support Isle of Tone 100%, and my buddy Aaron at Dominion Fuzz, great fuzzes. And I'm really picky nowadays, now that I sold off most of my stuff. But Isle of Tone, and I hope to have a Dominion Fuzz coming soon. But check out the Isle of Tone fuzz with the drive really goosed. You're going to hear some Hendrix things in there that, if you listen to a lot of bootlegs, would happen. Way more Jimmy to me. You know, that sounds more of that live Jimmy stuff. So maybe in a way, you know, having the wah, maybe putting a vibe in between and then hitting the fuzz worked for those guys, you know, worked for Jimi Hendrix. There's that meme that goes around, Jimi Hendrix played at Woodstock and never cared about true bypass. Believe it or not, the fuzz pedal was one of the first true bypass pedals. So keep that in mind too. You're going into the fuzz and you're getting a clear signal going into the wah. Now, the wah not being true bypass going into the fuzz can degrade the fuzz. That's where that buffer may come in, where the univibe may help out. But to me, my own setup is guitar into the fuzz, into all of my fuzz, and then the wah and drive. That's the way I've always settled it. So basically, this video was kind of pointless if you don't really care, but sit down with your 2 pedals. You only got 2 of them, right? So sit down with them. Find what works for you. Don't care about what everybody else is doing. Find your sound. That's the greatest part of it. That's how I got to where I was, and I'm sure that's how all the other guys I've mentioned in this video got to where they were. They just hunted, they sat down with the stuff, and they made it work. They figured it out. And think about it. If you're only messing with 2 pedals, you get 2 options, this way or that way. So try it. Try your sound. Some tips I can give you is start with a broken up amp. That will really help. Get your amp to break up first, and then take the fuzz pedal, turn it on, leave the wah in line wherever you want. If you want to try it first, you want to try it second. Tune your fuzz in before you even try the wah. Get a good fuzz tone that you're totally comfortable when you can hang it up. And then blend the wah in and find where the wah is kind of hurting, where you're not getting, you know, if you put it on, you're not getting that. We're not getting any sweep, right? So there's only so much you can do. Turn the fuzz all the way off. So in this case, I would put that thing first, you know? sound. That's the secret to happiness. I swear, I wouldn't have sold all my stuff if it wasn't. Take it from me. I've been there. I've tried to sound like other people. Now I'm just hoping someday I can sound like myself. Be good to each other. Find those tones. Be well.